The rain lashed against the windows of Detective Alex Ramirez's office, mirroring the storm brewing inside him. For weeks, he'd been chasing a ghost, a ruthless killer who operated from the shadows of New York City's underbelly. The victim count was rising, each body discovered in more gruesome and elaborate ways, a twisted game played out on the city's streets. The emotional hook was a mounting pressure on Ramirez, the weight of each unsolved case adding to the heavy burden on his shoulders. He was a good cop, a man driven by a deep sense of justice, but the killer's taunting seemed to mock his every move, a constant reminder of his failures. The first victim, a young street artist known for her vibrant murals, was found in an abandoned subway tunnel, her body contorted in a macabre tableau. The second, a wealthy socialite, was discovered in a locked penthouse suite, her death stage to resemble a suicide. The third, a promising young musician, was found in a jazz club, his throat slit in a bloody sacrifice. Ramirez, haunted by the victims' faces, pored over every detail, every clue, searching for a pattern, a motive, anything that could lead him to the killer. But the killer was a master disguise, leaving no trace, no fingerprints, no DNA. Each crime scene was a macabre masterpiece, a twisted puzzle designed to taunt and torment the city's finest detectives. The dramatic irony lay in the killer's meticulous planning, his ability to operate in plain sight, unnoticed and unassuming. The city, a bustling metropolis teeming with life, was also a breeding ground for darkness, where secrets would be buried and identities easily concealed. The suspense built with each new victim, each elaborate crime scene. The city, once a symbol of hope and opportunity, was now shrouded in fear, the killer's presence casting a long shadow over its vibrant streets. Ramirez, driven by a desperate need to stop the bloodshed, found himself drawn into a dangerous game of cat and mouse, a battle of wits against an unseen and seemingly unstoppable enemy. A major power shift occurred when Ramirez stumbled upon an encrypted message board frequented by individuals involved in the city's underground economy. The messages, cryptic and coded, hinted at an illicit network operating beneath the surface, a network that seemed to be connected to the recent murders. Ramirez, delving deeper into the shadowy world of hackers, smugglers, and assassins, found himself navigating a treacherous landscape where danger lurked around every corner. The life lesson began to crystallize. The darkness that lurks within the shadows of even the most vibrant cities, the hidden dangers that exist beneath the surface of everyday life. Ramirez, once a man of the law, now found himself operating on the fringes, questioning his own morality as he crossed lines to bring the killer to justice. As Ramirez pursued the leads provided by the encrypted messages, he discovered a hidden auction house, a den of iniquity where stolen goods, illegal weapons, and even human beings were traded like commodities. The auction house was a hive of activity, a microcosm of the city's dark underbelly, where the wealthy and powerful indulge their most depraved desires. Ramirez, undercover, infiltrated the auction house, his heart pounding as he witnessed the depravity on display. He saw the faces of the city's elite mingle with those of hardened criminals, their eyes gleaming with greed and lust. The auctioneer, a man known only as a collector, exuded an aura of power and menace, his voice a chilling whisper as he described the night's offerings. Just as Ramirez was about to make his move, a figure emerged from the shadows, his gaze sweeping across the room, landing on Ramirez with chilling accuracy. The collector, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, smiled a chilling, knowing smile. "I've been expecting you, detective," he said, his voice a low growl. It seems the game is finally about to begin. The suspense hung heavy in the air. Ramirez, trapped in the heart of the city's underworld, faced a formidable opponent, a man who seemed to know his every move. The lines between hunter and prey had blurred, and Ramirez found himself staring into the abyss, the fate of the city hanging in the balance. The collector's words hung in the air, each syllable a chilling note in the cacophony of the auction house. Ramirez's cover, meticulously crafted, had been blown with a single glance. The dramatic irony was a suffocating blanket. He had sought to expose the darkness, only to find himself bathed in its oppressive glow. The power shift was immediate. He was no longer the hunter, but the hunted, trapped in a viper's nest of wealth and depravity. Before Ramirez could react, two hulking figures materialized from the crowd, their eyes cold and menacing. They moved with a practiced efficiency, their grip on his arms like steel vices. The collector chuckled, a dry, rasping sound that echoed through the stunned silence of the auction house. Such a persistent little fly, detective, always buzzing where you don't belong. Ramirez struggled, but it was futile. He was outnumbered, outmaneuvered. As his captors dragged him through a hidden door behind the auctioneer's podium, the opulent facade of the auction house dissolved, revealing a grimy, labyrinthine network of tunnels beneath the city streets. The twist was a jarring descent into a literal underworld, a hidden realm where the rules of the surface world didn't apply. The tunnels were a chaotic maze of flickering lights, damp concrete, and the hushed whispers of unseen figures. The air was thick with the stench of decay and something else, something metallic and vaguely unsettling. Ramirez was dragged deeper into the subterranean realm, the sound of the city above fading into a distant hum. He was eventually thrown into a small, dimly lit cell, the heavy steel door clanging shut behind him. The silence here was different, a heavy, expectant silence that felt far more ominous than the noise of the auction house. He was alone, stripped of his badge, his weapon, his authority. Days bled into nights. Ramirez was interrogated by the collector, the questions less about his investigation and more about what he knew, who he had spoken to. The collector possessed an unnerving knowledge of Ramirez's life, his family, his past. The suspense tightened with each veiled threat, each subtle reminder of collector's reach. Then came the first twist within this subterranean prison. One of his guards, a young man with haunted eyes and a nervous tremor in his hands, slipped him a small, folded piece of paper during a meager meal. The note contained a single word: follow. The guard's motives were unclear, his loyalty uncertain. But Ramirez, desperate for any glimmer of hope, decided to take the risk. During his next escorted trip to a crude washroom, he feigned illness, creating a brief distraction. In the chaos, he slipped away, following the barely perceptible markings the guard had indicated on the walls. The markings led him through a series of increasingly treacherous tunnels, the air growing colder, the silence more profound. He passed makeshift cells, each holding shadowy figures, their eyes filled with despair. This wasn't just an auction house. It was a prison, a place where people vanished without a trace. The second twist was the discovery of a hidden chamber filled with sophisticated surveillance equipment. Banks of monitors displayed live feeds from various locations throughout the city. The auction house, the tunnels, and chillingly, seemingly random street corners and private residences. The collector wasn't just operating in the shadows. He was watching everything. As Ramirez frantically tried to understand the scope of the collector's operation, a figure emerged from the darkness behind him. It was a guard who had helped him, but his demeanor was different now. His eyes no longer filled with fear, but with a cold, calculating resolve. "You shouldn't have come here, detective," the guard said, his voice devoid of emotion. "The collector showed me your file. You're getting too close." He produced a familiar-looking handgun, its cold metal glinting in the dim light. The suspense hung heavy in the subterranean chamber. The guard, his supposed ally, had betrayed him. Had he been a double agent all along? Was this another layer in the collector's twisted game? As the guard raised a weapon, a voice echoed from the shadows deeper within the chamber. A voice that sent a shiver down Ramirez's spine. A voice he recognized all too well. "Let him go, Marco. He's more valuable alive for now." The collector stepped into the light, his smile wider, more predatory than before. And beside him stood someone Ramirez never expected to see. Someone whose presence twisted the entire case into something far more personal and far more dangerous. The sight of Captain Eva Rostova standing beside the collector sent a shockwave through Ramirez that was more debilitating than any physical blow. His mentor, the woman who had guided his career, the embodiment of justice in his eyes, was now standing in the heart of the city's underworld, her expression unreadable. The dramatic irony was a crushing weight. The light he had always followed had led him directly into the deepest darkness. "Captain?" Ramirez managed, his voice hoarse with disbelief. Rostova's gaze was cold, devoid of the warmth he had always known. "Detective Ramirez," she said, her voice flat. "You've stumbled into a world you don't understand." The power shift was absolute. The lines between right and wrong, good and evil, had become irrevocably blurred. The collector chuckled, placing a possessive hand on Rostova's arm. Captain Rostova has a unique understanding of the intricacies of my operations, detective. A mutually beneficial arrangement, wouldn't you say? The truth crashed down on Ramirez with brutal force. Rostova wasn't just aware of the collector's underworld. She was a part of it. The resources she had always seemed to have access to, the cases that mysteriously went cold, the blind eyes turned to certain corners of the city. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. The collector revealed his motivations, a twisted philosophy of societal cleansing. He saw himself as a necessary evil, removing the undesirables, the weak, the corrupt from the city's fabric. The elaborate murders weren't just for his amusement. They were a perverse form of social engineering orchestrated with Rostova's knowledge, and Ramirez now suspected her active participation. The auction house wasn't just for illicit goods. It was a marketplace for information, for influence, and for the disposal of inconvenient individuals. The tunnels were the arteries of this hidden world, allowing the collector and his network to operate with impunity. A tense standoff ensued. Ramirez, though stripped of his authority, refused to back down. The betrayal cut deep, but his commitment to justice remained unbroken. He appealed to the woman he once admired, the woman he thought he knew. "Captain, this isn't you," he pleaded. "This isn't what you stand for." A flicker of something, regret, sadness, crossed Rostova's face, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You were always a naive idealist, Ramirez," she said, her voice hardening. "The world isn't black and white. Sometimes you have to embrace the darkness to achieve a greater good." The greater good, Ramirez realized with horror, was a collector's twisted vision of a purified city, a vision built on blood and silence. Rostova, once his moral compass, had become complicit in this terrifying agenda. Just as the situation seemed to reach an impasse, Marco, the seemingly treacherous guard, made his move. With a sudden burst of speed, he lunged at the collector, a makeshift shiv glinting in his hand. The collector roared in surprise, and chaos erupted in the subterranean chamber. Marco's act of defiance bought Ramirez the precious seconds he needed. He tackled Rostova, disarming her in the ensuing struggle. The fight was brutal, a desperate clash between a protege and his fallen mentor. The arrival of a tactical unit, alerted by Jake, a contact Ramirez had made within the hacking underworld, brought a swift end to the conflict. The collector and his inner circle, including a subdued Captain Rostova, were taken into custody. The hidden network beneath the city began to unravel, its dark secrets finally exposed to the light. The final scene showed Ramirez standing above ground, the rain having finally stopped, a fragile dawn breaking over the city skyline. The darkness hadn't been entirely vanquished, but a significant blow had been struck. Justice, though twisted and betrayed, had ultimately prevailed. The life lesson was stark. Even those in positions of power and trust can succumb to corruption, and the fight for justice requires unwavering vigilance and a willingness to confront even our heroes when they stray. But as Ramirez looked out at the awakening city, a single, untraceable burner phone in his pocket vibrated. The message was simple, a coded address in a previously unknown section of the tunnels. And beneath the address, a single word, awakening. The suspense hung heavy in the morning air. The collector and Rostova were in custody, but the message hinted at a larger, more deeply rooted organization, one that was now stirring the darkness. The underworld of New York City, it seemed, had even darker corners left to explore. The fight was far from over. The end